welcome back to our channel. Rain falls silently on Fairmont Crest Cemetery, where pain and secrets are buried with one name, Doug. No one expected that behind the seemingly peaceful funeral was the beginning of an underground storm that would soon engulf everything. Donnell knelt before his friend's grave, unaware that a few miles away, Vanessa was being interrogated in a black funeral dress, and the cold smile on her lips was the sign of a bloody counterattack. As two police cars silently appeared behind Donnell, the rain began to fall harder, signaling that justice, guilt, and betrayal were about to merge in a battle with no winner. This is no longer the story of Doug's death, but the beginning of a fateful chess game between three souls caught between guilt and ambition. Then the rain began to fall harder, each cold drop falling on the dark ground, spreading like streaks of blood. Donnell remained kneeling, his hands digging into the newly filled dirt, the cold feeling seeping through his fingers as if he were touching Doug's soul. Everything around him was suffocatingly silent, only the sound of the rain falling and his ragged breathing. But not far away, a phone call was causing everything Donnell believed to begin to crumble. On the other end of the line, the name Vanessa was mentioned in a low, cold tone, and just that one sentence was enough to cause the entire police department to change direction. What had once been thought to be an accident was now being treated as a premeditated murder, and all the clues began to point to the same place, Fairmont Crest. While Donnell collapsed in the face of loss, Vanessa sat in the interrogation room, the light shining directly on her expressionless face. The red lipstick on her lips had not yet faded, even though the funeral had not yet ended. Her eyes looked through the one-way glass, where there were looks of scrutiny, suspicion and hatred. On the other side, Joey bowed his head, his hands shaking, his eyes blank as if he were watching his own soul disintegrate. Vanessa smiled slightly, a thin, cold, calculating smile. She was no longer the woman who had cried when she heard the news of Doug's death, but one who was prepared to confront the world. She knew this moment would come, when every word, every action of hers would be stripped away, turned into evidence against herself. But Vanessa was not afraid. In her heart, pain and hatred mingled like a fire that had burned for too long, now unable to be extinguished. Doug was more than a friend, he was the only one she trusted, the one who saved her from her darkest days. But then he betrayed her. He chose to stay silent, to protect the one who caused it all, Joey. And when Doug died, Vanessa understood that friendship, loyalty, and justice were all luxuries in Fairmont Crest. She had lost everything, and now there was only one thing left, payback. Joey sat in the interrogation room, his hands rubbing together, sweat pouring out despite the cold room. He knew Vanessa was in the next room, knew she could destroy him with a single word. The memories came flooding back, the night of Doug's death, the arguing, the car losing control, the panic in the rearview mirror. Joey had never dared to face the fact that he could be the reason Doug died. But now, with Vanessa back and ready to confront him, he had no way out. Meanwhile, at the cemetery, Donnell was still clueless. He stood in the rain, his eyes red, looking around, feeling like someone was watching him. He had heard the rumors, that Doug's death was no accident, that someone wanted to silence him forever. And when two police cars stopped behind him, his heart sank. He thought they were there to protect him, but then an officer came up, pulled out his handcuffs, and called out his name. Everything stopped. Donnell lifted his head, letting the rain mix with his tears, not knowing whether to laugh or scream. He knew someone had orchestrated this, and the only name that rang in his mind was Vanessa. But Vanessa wasn't the only one playing this game. Inside Fairmont Crest, hidden forces were beginning to move. Some wanted to use Doug's death to destroy Donnell, others wanted to use Vanessa as a distraction. Joey was the weakest pawn, and he was caught in the crossfire, between guilt and survival instinct. He had believed Vanessa would protect him, but now her eyes were filled with contempt, as if he were a mere shadow that didn't deserve to exist. Joey knew that if she opened her mouth, he would lose everything. Vanessa looked at the mirror, the reflection blurred by the steam. She thought of Donnell, falling apart outside, and part of her wanted to believe he was innocent. But the doubt was too great, and she couldn't accept that the only person still on her side could have betrayed her. She remembered the secret meeting with Doug a few days before his death, where he promised to hand over evidence to her that could topple the entire criminal network in Fairmont Crest. But the next morning, he was gone, and only his burned-out car remained. Vanessa understood that Doug had died not because of an accident, but because of the truth he held. Donnell was taken to the police station, the flashing lights reflecting off the water. He was silent, not saying a word. 100 questions filled his mind: who betrayed whom, who killed Doug, and why did it all end like this? He had thought Vanessa was his only ally, but what he heard along the way left him bewildered. Rumors spread that she had sold information to the police in exchange for immunity. And Joey, who had been his small, frail friend, was now the main witness against him. As night fell, things became darker. Donnell sat in his cell, watching the dim light filtering through the bars. Outside, Vanessa was taken to a private room, where someone was waiting. A man in a black suit, his voice low, said that the game was going in the right direction. She didn't answer, just looked down at her hand, the hand that had held Doug's in his final days. She wondered, was she any different? She was using someone's death to get what she wanted, justice or power, she wasn't sure. Joey was in a different ward. In the darkness, he heard the clang of metal, footsteps, and Donnell's distant voice. He wanted to scream, to say he didn't mean it, that it was all a mistake. But he was afraid. He knew if he admitted it, he would die. And somewhere, Vanessa was waiting for the moment he would collapse. The rain continued to fall, as if it had never stopped. Fairmont Crest was still lit, where the rich and powerful drank and plotted while the other three, Donnell, Vanessa, and Joey, sunk deeper into their own private hell. Doug might be dead, but that death was only the beginning of a chain of betrayals, revenge, and self-destruction. No one was a pure victim anymore. They had all made a choice, chosen to remain silent, chosen to betray, chosen to survive at all costs. And in the end, only one question echoes in their minds: who is really behind it all, and who will be next buried under the cold earth? Rain falls silently on Fairmont Crest Cemetery, where pain and secrets are buried with one name, Doug. No one knows that behind the seemingly peaceful funeral is the beginning of an underground storm that will soon swallow everything. Donnell kneels at his friend's grave, unaware that a few miles away, Vanessa is being interrogated in a black funeral dress, and the cold smile on her lips is the sign of a bloody counterattack. As two police cars silently appear behind Donnell, the rain begins to fall harder, signaling that justice, guilt, and betrayal are about to merge in a battle with no winner. This is no longer the story of Doug's death, but the beginning of a fateful chess game between three souls caught between guilt and ambition. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still dark, as if it knew Fairmont Crest would never be the same again. As night fell, a figure stepped silently through the police line, his shoes sloshing in puddles left by the tragic rain. In his hand was a small USB drive, wrapped in a plastic bag covered in mud, evidence Doug had promised to give Vanessa, something everyone thought had been burned in the accident. But when the device was plugged into the computer in the investigation room, the videos appeared, not only of the night Doug died, but also of the unexpected. Donnell was the one behind the wheel, and Vanessa was the one standing by the side of the road, holding the phone, recording the entire incident. All theories were overturned, all oaths were shattered. Donnell stared at the screen, his body turned to stone. He remembered that night clearly, the screaming, the headlights, and the helpless feeling as the car skidded off the road. But what he didn't remember, or didn't want to remember, was Vanessa's eyes, the icy eyes, not of someone who wanted to save, but of someone waiting for the end. He understood now. She knew. She had left Doug to die. And worse, she had recorded it all to keep him in check. Vanessa stood behind the glass, watching Donnell crumble. Tears fell from her eyes, not from regret, but because it had all gone too far. She could no longer tell justice from revenge. Doug had betrayed her, Donnell had lied, Joey had betrayed her, and now, as it all fell apart, she was the only one left standing in the ashes. But in that moment, the inspector walked in, placing a thick envelope in front of her. Inside was a photo. Doug was alive, captured on a suburban hospital camera 3 weeks ago. His face was scarred, but his eyes still held the look of the man who had loved her. Vanessa froze. All her plans for revenge, all her schemes she had worked so hard to create over the years, had all been based on a lie. Meanwhile, Joey was being taken out of another cell. He heard the news that Doug was alive, and his eyes lit up like someone who had just been rescued from hell. But that hope only lasted a few seconds, before an explosion rang out in the police station parking lot. The glass shattered, and the fire raged. The investigation team scattered, and in the chaos, no one realized that Vanessa had disappeared. She left her phone behind, the screen still showing the last video, Doug lying motionless, and her voice rang out coldly, "None of you are innocent." The next morning, the local news reported, "Vanessa missing. Donnell held for further investigation. Joey released for lack of evidence." But buried deep in the news was a detail that many overlooked. A witness at a suburban hospital claimed to have seen a woman in a black coat visit Doug the night before the explosion and leave just minutes before he disappeared again. With the mansion doors closed, rumors began to spread, that Doug was alive, that Vanessa was looking for him, that Donnell was about to confess to a crime bigger than the accident. And amid the rumors, an anonymous email was sent to the entire investigation team: "If you want to know who really killed Doug, dig deeper, not in the grave, but in Dupree's own house." The screen went black, leaving only the sound of wind whistling through the cracks in the door and a red light blinking in the corner of the cell. Donnell looked up, realizing the camera was still rolling, and someone on the other side was watching his every breath. In a moment, he understood that the game wasn't over, it had just begun, and Vanessa might not be the only one controlling this game.